Hello everyone and welcome to round 2 of this year's FIDE World Cup, and this is the game that brought you the big news. Gukesh enters the world top 10 and yes, he overtakes Viswanathan Anand as India's new #1 or India's highest rated player after 37 years for Anand holding this record. Someone wrote in the comments on Twitter, I did not verify this, but I'm sure it's true. Why would anyone lie? On the internet, Hare Krishna did overtake Anand once, but only in the live rating. So while this is definitely true, Gukesh is currently India #1, but also only in the live ratings. If he drops in rating below Anand before the end of the month, then it's not really true. So we'll see how he does, but up until then, let's check out the game. It's a very nice one, and he finds a very, very neat trick to end the game. So let's check it out. Misratdin Iskandarov has to equalize, or rather, he has to win this game to equalize the match and then to force tiebreaks against Gukesh. We have e4, pawn to c5, Gukesh goes for the Sicilian defense, knight f3, knight to c6, and now d4. Gukesh going for the so-called old Sicilian. C captures on d4, knight captures, and knight to f6. We have knight to c3 and e5 now. The Pelican variation, or the Sveshnikov, or the Lasker variation, many names to this one. Knight d to b5, and now pawn to d6. We have knight to d5, and now knight captures on d5. E captures on d5, and now knight to b8. If you remember, this is, yes, the exact same position Fabiano Caruana and Magnus Carlsen had in their 2018 World Chess Championship match in London, where in some games Magnus tried knight to b8, in some games he tried knight to e7, but all of the classical games ended in a draw. So here he goes knight to b8, we have pawn to a4, bishop to e7, and now in one of the games Fabiano Caruana in the World Chess Championship match went bishop to e2, but here we have bishop to d2. Still not a new move, though. It has been played before. We have castles, pawn to a5, and now pawn to a6, chasing away the knight, knight a3, and now bishop to f5. Again, nothing new here. We have knight to c4, and now knight to d7. Now the knight is coming to c5, and here there is a game where bishop to e2 was played, but we have bishop to b4 by Misratdin, and it is now, as of move 14, that we have a completely new game. So okay, the d6 pawn is hanging, but Gukesh counters with an attack, rook to c8. Now if the knight moves, then the c2 pawn will hang as well. So bishop to e2, we have bishop to g6, now preparing pawn to f5, and now castles. Gukesh goes knight to c5, we have rook to a3. Now the rook can also help out with the defense along the third rank, but also the rook can be shifted over to try and attack the black king at some point, although it's very hard to imagine that happening with this bishop being on g6, and now pawn to f5. And if you look at how nicely Gukesh has placed all of his pieces on such active squares, white didn't really get all that much out of the opening. The knight is a monster on c5, the bishops are nicely placed. Okay, not incredibly active, but you know, those pawns are coming to e4 and f4 or f4 at some point, so it's going to be very strong. The rook's also on c and f files. The queen still has to figure out how to get into the game, but all in all, a very good position with black for, you know, under move 20. Knight to b6, going after the rook, also a beautiful outpost for the knight. We have rook to c7, and now bishop captures on c5. Here Misratdin says, all right, my bishop here is not nearly as strong as your knight, so let's trade it. Bishop captures, we have rook captures, and now pawn to b4. This is made possible by Gukesh playing f5, so the bishop no longer attacks the c2 pawn, otherwise you would not be able to do this. Rook to c7, and now pawn to c4. You do not want this pawn being a target once f4 is played. So pawn to e4, now you can also see that the bishop can assume this diagonal. And pawn to f4. Now, with the pawn to f4, the position either gets blockaded or it forces Gukesh to play e captures on f3 en passant, which he does. You don't have to do it. You could maybe try to remaneuver the light square bishop over to this diagonal somehow, or you could just put the bishop on f6. But he says, no, it's time. E captures on f3 en passant, bishop captures, and now bishop to f6. We have king to h1, always a useful prophylactic move, and now bishop to e5. This is how Gukesh activates the bishop, but also now makes way for his queen to enter the game. So you have to be very, very careful here. And here Misratdin prepares a very nasty trick for Gukesh. He plays rook to e1, and now if Gukesh just goes queen to h4, which is a very nice move, I'm sure everyone would play this, it would be a problem, because then rook captures on e5, d captures, and then the d pawn marches forward with the d7 square being covered. The bishop can enter the game with check. So, you know, very, very good position for white. If anything, everything, it's white who would be better here. So after rook to e1, we have rook c all the way to f7. Gukesh just doubles up on the f file. He doesn't fall for this. And now rook 8 to e3. Doubling up on the e file, we have bishop to f4, chasing away the rook. And now, well, you could move the rook. It doesn't look all that great, because if the rook moves, then queen to h4 comes, threatens checkmate. And now if you just want to continue the game, you have to play this ugly h3 move. And then after queen g3, you have to play king to g1 in order to avoid checkmate. And then Gukesh can choose, you know, between just closing off the e file to prevent the rooks from infiltrating. You could play rook to c8. You could go for queen h2 check immediately. And okay, it's not a loss for white, but it doesn't look like something very, very enjoyable. So instead, after bishop to f4, here Misratdin plays queen to d4. He sacrifices the exchange, and okay, Gukesh captures it. Bishop captures, we have rook captures, and now, sorry, not rook captures, queen captures, and now pawn to f4, chases away the queen, queen to e6, paralyzes the rooks here, and bishop to f5. Now chases away the queen, queen back all the way to e2, and now just queen to h4. Okay, now it's not as dangerous as there is no dark square bishop attacking the h2 pawn, but now comes king to g1. It's okay if the king remains on h1, and let's say you try something like c5, then g5 can be very, very dangerous, g4 and so on. G5 can be very dangerous in all of the lines. Even now after king to h1, you could still go for g5, but Gukesh doesn't want to overpush it. No, sorry, Misratdin doesn't want to overpush it. King to g1 is played, and now queen back to f6. You could, like I said, play g5 right away. Queen to f6 was played, and now queen to d2. Putting pressure on the pawn, also defending against queen to d4 check. Rook to e7, offering a rook trade, as now Gukesh is up material. He, of course, wants to trade. Rook captures, queen captures, and now pawn to c5. Finally, it happens. And okay, the material has been sacrificed, but those pawns do look scary. So d captures, and now pawn to d6, advancing the pawn all the way to d6. Gukesh, of course, trades queens. This comes with check, so queen e3 check, captures, and now comes b captures on c5. F captures on e3 first, and b captures on c5. And now the question is, can Gukesh play this? Is he better? Is he worse? Those pawns really look scary. This pawn is already on d6. Can he do something about this position? Well, in fact, he's completely winning here, but you have to find one very, very tricky idea. So feel free to pause the video and win the game for Gukesh and get him all the way to the world top 10 and India #1. While I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting this incredible maneuver. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is bishop to e4. A beautiful centralizing move by the bishop. It guards the b7 pawn, but also it just leaves white without a move. Of course, first thing you ask is the bishop just free here? Not really, because if the bishop captures, then the rook controls the entire f-file, and there is no defense here. You're just going to play pawn to e2, and next move you're going to queen. There is no stopping this. So obviously you cannot take the bishop. So bishop to g4 is played, and now Gukesh plays bishop to d3. He cuts off the white king from entering the position, and now e2, e1 will be winning, of course. But here's the problem. Misratdin just repeats bishop to f3, and now where's the continuation? Both of them were very low on time. It's like Gukesh was maybe some 7 minutes, Misratdin had 10 minutes on the clock. e2 is winning here, but it's you still have to grind a lot. For example, king to f2. Now bishop to e4. The bishop now cannot move. You're going to play captures, and after bishop captures, you're going to force this rook versus knight endgame, where white is up a pawn, and already there's a nasty pawn on d6. But still, the position is completely winning for black. However, it does look scary, and knights are very tricky bastards, so you know anything could happen. But instead he repeats once, bishop to e4. We have bishop to g4, and now king to f7. King to f7 means that Gukesh calculated everything absolutely precisely. He allowed his clock to go down to, I believe, 1 minute, but he calculates precisely. And if he played king to f7, this means that he will lose the pawn, because knight to c4, knight captures on e3 will happen. But this also means that his king will become incredibly active and just gobble up all of these pawns, with white having nothing to do against this. So knight to c4. king to f6, knight captures on e3, and now king to e5. So the line that we've shown does win by force, but if you want to play against the tricky knight, this is just completely winning without any trickiness possible. Knight to c4 check, king to d4. Now the pawns are falling, and now knight to b6. And this is one last trick that Misratdin tries. If the pawn is captured right away, the knight to d7 check will cost the Gukesh the rook, but he doesn't blunder after knight to b6. He just plays bishop to c6, he guards the d7 square, and now all of the pawns will fall. Even if you play something like pawn to d7, doesn't really matter. So it was in this position on move 44 that Misratdin Iskandarov resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Gukesh wins both of the games, and he goes straight into round 3. I don't know if his opponent is known, but I will show at least one more game from round 2, and then we will discuss who plays against who and other fun stuff. So here he resigned. It's not as simple as it looks. I will just show you one super tricky line. Misratdin decided to call it a day here, but look at this. Pawn to d7, now comes king captures on c5, and now look at this. Pawn to h3, you don't really have an option. You can bring your king into the game, so you might as well create some breathing room for the king. King b5, you go after the a pawn, now knight to c8, and now look at this. King captures on a5, knight to d6. You are planning to play knight to e8 to prevent the rook from going to d8, and then you will be threatening promotion. King to b4, and now knight to e8, and now you are threatening to bring the queen into the game, but it doesn't matter, because here you will just play bishop captures on d7, and after bishop captures, yes, you do have 2 pieces for the rook, but look at this. Rook to f7 attacks the bishop, and now what do you play? You cannot go over on this diagonal, so you might as well just move away. Bishop to g4 or anywhere, doesn't really matter, and now king to c5, taking away the d6 square from the white knight, and now the white knight is stuck there on e8, and you're just going to push your a pawn to victory. It's actually that simple. So what you could do is something like king h2, let's say a5. Even if bishop to e6, then you just go for the double attack, you win material. If not bishop to e6, then you really have nothing. Okay, the bishop could help out with against the pawn, but I mean, you have other pawns you can push, and the knight is stuck here. The knight is not going anywhere for the rest of the game, as it's on a light square, and everyone knows if the knight is on a light square, the only square for it to go to is a dark square, which doesn't really help you, as you only have a light square bishop to protect the knight. So I mean, very tricky stuff, but obviously Misratdin calculated it all and decided to call it a day here. So after bishop to c6, Gukesh enters the top 10, and he's the new Indian #1. But like I said, only in the live ratings. So if he gets a weaker opponent in the next round, maybe he gets a draw, or maybe he even loses, then he will probably again drop below. So we'll have to wait until the end of the tournament, and who knows if he will be playing anything else after the tournament for the entire month. But yeah, good stuff. These are the new rankings on the world top 10. I took this screenshot at the moment that Gukesh ended his game, so it could be even different now, but I don't think it is. So there you have it. Magnus Caruana, Hikaru in third, world champion Dean Glirin in fourth, Yanni Pomnishi, Alireza Firuja, Wesley So, Anish Giri, and now in number 9 it is Gukesh, but also in number 10 it is Viswanathan Anand. So even by losing his spot to Gukesh, Anand is still in the world top 10. Then you have Rapport, Karyakin, Rajabov, Dominguez Perez, Arunyan, and Mamedyarov, and so on and so on. So yeah, brilliant stuff by young Gukesh, only 17 years old and already in the top 10. Absolutely brilliant. So, all the best to him. I would like to thank Seth Harper, Schlurcher, Paul Harris, Erin is the best wife, and Richard Schwartz for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of this wonderful event until it finishes. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.